Hello everyone, my name is Peter, and as the title of this video suggests, it's another hip-hop centric video. I do listen to other music genres, I assure you. It's just the videos I'm doing at the moment seem to be the ones I can get out the quickest. The next video I do will stray away from hip-hop a little bit, I promise, for those of you who want something different, but it might take a little bit more time to plan, to edit, to write and record and all that stuff. So yeah, ignoring all of that, let's put all that aside for now. In the meantime, we're going to talk about 5 of my favourite hip-hop albums from the 90s. Now quickly, before we get into this, you may have heard of Oliver from the channel Deep Cuts, one of the biggest influences on my own content. He has a series where he talks about 5 albums to get you into a certain genre. This is kind of similar, but it's also different in the sense that I'm just doing 5 of what I think are the best albums from a genre, not 5 to get you into the genre, and I just wanted that distinction to be acknowledged. Anyway, finally, let's get on with the video. The 90s were a fantastically creative period for hip-hop as it began to branch out into numerous subsets and subgenres, including hardcore hip-hop, alternative hip-hop, jazz rap, gangster rap, and I've tried to include a range of styles on my list, which, by the way, is in no particular order. So let's begin the list with a fairly obvious one that I'm sure you knew was going to be on the list before you even clicked the video. I'm pretty certain that if you're at all into hip-hop, you've already heard Nas's Illmatic, so for that reason I'm not going to talk about it at great length, but the very fact I can assume this is a testament to how well this album exemplifies the core essence of hip-hop. This album cycles through one classic boom-bap beat after another, with Nas on top, dropping these vivid and poetic lines about his experiences in growing up in Queensbridge, New York. It is worth noting that while the production on this album isn't exactly groundbreaking or anything, the main producers on the album, DJ Premier, Large Professor, Q-Tip, and a host of other names, they create the perfect foundation for Nas to take centre stage with his words. I mean, look at tracks like One Love, New York State of Mind, It Ain't Hard to Tell. These are examples of Nas being given the space to create lengthy verses that are so intricate and so detailed. Illmatic is both musically straightforward while being lyrically complex. There's so much to unpack here from just reading the lyrics while you listen to the album. Truly one of hip-hop's defining moments, and I think it might be even the best example we have that hip-hop and poetry are more closely linked than a lot of people think. Yeah, I know, perhaps 36 Chambers might have been the more popular choice from the Wu-Tang discography, but I'm personally going to go with GZA's Liquid Swords. Arguably the strongest album in Wu-Tang's catalogue, which is no small feat given how many fantastic albums there are to pick. GZA delivers one of the densest lyrical displays from any rapper on any album ever. And it might sound like I'm joking or I'm over-exaggerating, but trust me, I'm really not. GZA spends a lot of time on this album rapping about how talented he is as a rapper and an MC, which is fine because he does it with an unmatched dexterity and an unmatched flow. The man himself, RZA, also delivers his typical sharp and slick lo-fi beats, however with a more dark and atmospheric twist to them than he employed on other early Wu-Tang releases. Liquid Swords also continues a Wu-Tang tradition of including skits from a martial arts film. In this case it's from the film Shogun Assassin. A music writer for the NME called Sam Moore did a retrospective think piece on GZA's Liquid Swords, and there's a little quote in there about RZA's production style with the added skits that I'm just going to read out to you. It succeeds in creating the desired mood, intimidating, violent, and yet eminently head-boppable. I'd say the best examples of this happening on Liquid Swords are tracks like Jewel of the Iron Mike, Cold World, as well as the Method Man assisted Shadowboxing, where Method Man delivers one of the most slick and confident verses on the whole album. This album's another must listen. It's a fantastic record in the Wu-Tang discography, and that's pretty much all I have to say. I mean, come on, how could I make this list and not include OutKast's Aquemini? I mean, this album used to be in my top 5 of all time across all genres, and while I probably wouldn't rank it as high now, because of all the albums I've heard since, it's still brilliant, and I want to talk about it here. Legendary Atlanta duo, Andre 3000 and Big Boy. They need no introduction at this point, but I think Aquemini is their strongest album, and I know there's a lot of debate surrounding that. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. OutKast do aim to address some difficult topics on this album, such as the harsh realities of the black experience, drug addiction, but they also address other things like artistic integrity, relationships, and a whole host of other things. Being a part of the southern hip-hop scene, OutKast opted for a much different production style to their east and west contemporaries, often favouring live instrumentation over sampling. There's a whole lot of versatility that OutKast show on this album as well. I mean, there's great singles like, of course, Rosa Parks, Skew It on the Barbie, but there's also more lengthy, conceptual and ambitious tracks like Liberation, The Art of Storytelling, and of course, Spotty Dopalicious. Aquemini is easily one of the most eclectic and unique hip-hop albums of the 90s, and I think that Andre and Big Boy's propensity for more intellectual and socially conscious verses, as well as the soul and funk-inspired music direction of the album, are a big reason for this. I actually had a video in the works ages ago, I'm talking like 2 years ago. I was writing a script for a video where I was going to talk about Aquemini for a whole video. It was going to be the start of a new like essential albums kind of series. I don't know if I'm still going to do that or not, but who knows, I might just release that video in the future because I've still got the script. But yeah, Aquemini, fantastic album, I'm sure a lot of you know. Let's move on. Now you might be wondering why I've chosen Black on Both Sides over the Black Star album with Talib Kweli, and the reason for doing so is because I believe Black on Both Sides is the better and more talented and more versatile MC coming into his own. And listen, right, listen here, that is no disrespect to Talib Kweli. Man's a legend in his own right, tremendously gifted rapper and MC and lyricist, but not many rappers could compete with Mos Def in his prime. And Black on Both Sides is unquestionably prime Mos Def. Mos Def's versatility can be found all over this album. Mos Def delivers tight and socially conscious verses on most of the tracks here, and he does it in a way that is so unique to him that not many others were doing. I mean, who was making tracks that sounded like hip-hop or mathematics or New World Water? Who was writing about stuff like the ongoing global water crisis at the time? Not many other rappers were, standing up and addressing issues like this. Mos Def also shows on this album that he is genuinely a great singer and he can hold his own. Unlike a lot of other rappers that have tried to cross over into that territory, but that's a story for another day. I think the best example of that on this album is on the track Rock and Roll, which I admire Mos Def for shooting for a sound like this. On Rock and Roll, Mos Def confidently sings about the ripple effects of slavery and reclaiming black art for black people. And while I do disagree with a lot of the things he says about white artists in predominantly black genres, I have to admire Mos Def's tenacity and his risk-taking and his boldness in really shooting for a sound that aims to explore rock and soul in a deeper way than most do. Like Aquemini, Black on Both Sides opts for live instrumentation a lot of the time over sampling, and I think this creates a fresh, soul-oriented sound. And that sound still stands out in the hip-hop catalogue even today, and this album came out 21 years ago. Okay, so the final album on the list comes from legendary Philadelphia hip-hop band The Roots and their 1999 album Things Fall Apart. The Roots have released a lot of albums since Things Fall Apart came out back in 1999, and I still think Things Fall Apart stands as their best, most refined and most classic work. I think you could probably argue their 2011 album Undone as their most conceptual work, but I think Things Fall Apart probably still stands as the best. I mean, it's in debate. I love both of those two. The group's primary lyricist, Black Thought, as well as Malik B, both deliver extremely fantastic and technical verses across the whole duration of this album, pretty much. The group also didn't shy away from making social and political commentary on this album. I mean, there's a lot of dense bars in here about black culture and street violence, which are just kind of interlaced with everything else that Black Thought and Malik B are saying. And not to mention the creepy, eerie and unsettling closer, The Return to Innocence Lost, which, features those kind of themes about the cyclical and the harsh reality of the black experience in America. There's also a number of great features on this album. We see Common features on the track Act 2, Love of My Life. as well as the previously mentioned Mos Def, who features on the track Double Trouble, where we see Mos Def and Black Thought just trading these lines back and forth. It's one of my favourite songs in the album. I love this song. There's also another great feature from the Queen herself, Erykah Badu, on the song You Got Me, one of the band's most popular tracks. And how can I go this long without mentioning the soul-flavoured production that just creates this consistent and intoxicating groove across the whole album? As the drummer of the band, Questlove often is responsible for creating these tight grooves, as he has a drumming style that is both technically sound as well as catchy and accessible. This album, coming at the tail end of the 90s, provides a fantastic end to a decade absolutely loaded with quality. And that concludes my top 5 90s hip-hop albums. Now I know there's a lot of albums that I've missed off the list. For example, there's Biggie's Ready to Die, there's The Low End Theory, there's Midnight Marauders, Blowout Comb, Me Against the World, All Eyes on Me, The Infamous. You know, there's a lot of stuff that I've missed off here, and purely because of the nature of a top 5 list, I can't include everything that I like on it, okay? I like all those albums I just mentioned, but I can't include all of them on here. But let me know what your top 5 albums from the 90s would be in the comments below. It'd be nice to get a discussion going. Anyway, that's me for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I will speak to you again very soon.